Hello everyone, welcome back to our online English class. We're going to finish Unit 6 today, so we're going to go over lessons E and F. But before we do that, let's go over our homework. Okay, so your homework was to do pages 151 to 153 in your student's book, but I wanted you to send me the questions from exercise 4 on page 153. So let's go over them together. Okay, so for this exercise, you had to read the article from page 76 in your student's book, Rules About Time, and also the article on page 151, Time Rules Can Be Confusing. So they are very similar, and you need to compare them and use information from both articles for your answers. So number 1, what is the main idea of both articles? So you might say the main idea of both articles is that different cultures have different expectations about time. You might also add, it is important to understand expectations about time when you interact with people of different cultures. Number 2, what is the United States time rule about business meetings and personal appointments? Why was Bao confused? So you might say, business meetings and personal appointments in the United States start promptly or right on time. It is good to arrive early, but don't expect your appointment to start earlier than the scheduled time. Bao was confused because in his country, people not only arrive early for appointments, they also try to finish any business before the appointment. And you can find this information in the paragraph about Bao. Okay. Number 3, what is the United States time rule about social events? Why was Raphael confused? So you might say, social events in the United States start on time and you shouldn't arrive more than 10 to 15 minutes late. Raphael was confused because in his country, it is not unusual for guests to arrive an hour or two after a social event begins. So you can find that information in the article on page 76. Okay, and then number 4, what is the United States time rule about scheduled classes or appointments? Why was Leilani confused? So you might say, scheduled classes or appointments in the US are considered to be very important, and you shouldn't cancel or miss them unless there is an emergency. Leilani was confused because in her country, many people believe that relationships with people are more important than keeping a schedule. So that information was also on page 76. Okay, and then number 5, do you think time rules in the United States are confusing? Why or why not? Use evidence from both articles to support your answer. So this answer is based on your own thoughts and experiences, so there's no wrong answer. So you might say, yes, I think time rules in the US are confusing because many cultures around the world consider relationships more important than keeping time, but punctuality is very important in the US. Or you might say, no, I don't think time rules in the US are confusing because the rule is simple, just follow the schedule. Or, no, I don't think time rules in the US are confusing because I have lived here long enough to understand the expectations. Okay, so your answers might be very different, but that's okay. Just make sure that you use the information from the articles to support your answer. If you have any questions, you can ask me, and we will go ahead and move on. Okay, so lesson E, open your student's book to page 78. Page 78. Okay, so let's take a look at the diagram in exercise 1. You'll see 2 circles. The first one, the top one says good time manager, and the bottom one says weak time manager. And then you'll see 2 questions. What does a good time manager do? And what does a weak time manager do? Now, it's more common to use poor time manager rather than weak time manager. But in this case, poor doesn't mean someone who doesn't have money. it means lacking in skill or ability. So in this case, a poor time manager is someone who manages time poorly. Okay, so go ahead and take some time to list some characteristics of someone who manages time well and someone who manages time poorly. Okay, so number one, what does a good time manager do? So if you answer that question in a complete sentence, you might say, a good time manager makes a to-do list. And then maybe you could say, a good time manager prioritizes. Remember that word we learned during our last lesson? Prioritize. So a good time manager prioritizes. Let's look at number two. What does a poor or weak time manager do? So we might say a weak time manager procrastinates. We learned that word last time too. So delays or puts off responsibilities. So a weak time manager procrastinates, and maybe a weak time manager gets distracted easily. So distracted, I can write that word down for you. Distracted. So distracted means that you lose your focus or attention on something. So this is the base word, distract, and distracted is an adjective. Okay, and then let's go ahead and move on. We're going to skip exercise B, but you can do that on your own. Maybe during this quarantine, you've had to manage your time well because you have so much time, or maybe because you have to manage other people's schedules, like your children's schedules. Let's go ahead and take a look at page 79, exercise C. So the title of this paragraph is How Lucinda Manages Her Time. So I'm going to read it and I want you to follow along and we'll discuss it afterwards. Lucinda is not a very good time manager. For example, this is the way she does her homework. First, she sits down and takes out her books. 2 minutes later, she decides to get a cup of coffee. She goes to the kitchen, makes coffee, and returns to her desk. Before she starts reading, she checks her email. Then the phone rings. It's her best friend. They talk for 20 minutes. After they hang up, it's 9 p.m. Time for Lucinda's favorite TV show. She watches the show from 9 to 10. Then she studies from 10 until 1:30 a.m. Of course, she is tired in the morning. In summary, Lucinda is a weak time manager because she procrastinates. Okay, so if you want, you can also pause the video and practice reading on your own as well. But we're going to go ahead and move on. So I want you to look at the box in the bottom right-hand corner of the story. So it says, use one of the following phrases before your conclusion to introduce it. So you can see 3 common phrases that we use to show that you are concluding something, ending something. So in conclusion, to conclude, and in summary. Okay, I want to give you some time to go ahead and answer those 3 questions under the story. Okay, so let's take a look at number 1. What is the topic sentence? So in most cases, the topic sentence is at the beginning of a paragraph or story or article. So as you can see, the topic sentence is, Lucinda is not a very good time manager. So a topic sentence is like the title in a sentence form. It's very similar to a main idea, but a main idea can be at the beginning or the end, and even sometimes in the middle And a main idea often includes a little bit more information. So, for example, in this case, if you look at the last sentence, it says, in summary, Lucinda is a weak time manager because she procrastinates. So if you look at the topic sentence, it says Lucinda is not a very good time manager, but we don't know why. And so the last sentence gives us a little bit more information, so we could say that's the main idea. Okay, so number 2. How many examples does the writer give about Lucinda? So we can see that she decides to get a cup of coffee. She checks her email. She talks with her friend on the phone. And then she watches her favorite TV show. So that's 4 examples of how she manages her time poorly. Okay, and then number 3, which phrase introduces the conclusion? So just like it says in the box, we can see in summary, Lucinda is a weak time manager because she procrastinates. So the phrase is in summary. Okay, so now I'm going to read a paragraph about someone else, and I want you to take notes, and I will ask you some questions afterwards. If you want, you can go back and play it one more time, but try to limit listening to it to just once or twice. Okay, so the title is An Organized Student. Nita is a very organized person. For example, she keeps all of her class notes in one binder with different sections. Each section has a label. She also writes all of her homework assignments and due dates in a special notebook. Before she goes home, she checks her bag carefully. She makes sure she has all the books she needs. After she gets home, she has dinner. Then she plans how much time she will need for each assignment. She makes a list of tasks and crosses them out when she finishes them. When she feels tired, she takes a short break. In summary, Nita is an organized person and a successful student. Okay, so number 1, what is the topic sentence? Okay, so the topic sentence is, Nita is a very organized person. And then number 2, what is the first example? What is the first example? Okay, so the first example is, she keeps all of her class notes in one binder with different sections. Number 3, what is the second example? Okay, so the second example is, she writes all of her homework assignments and due dates in a special notebook. And then number 4, which words signal the conclusion? Okay, so in this case as well, in summary signals the conclusion. Okay, so now I want you to open your workbook to page 74. Workbook page 74. So you'll see that the paragraph I just read about Nita is from your workbook, and I asked the questions from exercise 1. Okay, and then exercise 2, answer the questions. Use the information in exercise 1 about Nita. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give you some time to complete exercise 2. Okay, so let's take a look at number 1. Why doesn't Nita forget the due dates of her assignments? And the answer is, she writes all her homework assignments and the due dates in a special notebook. Number 2, where does she keep her notes? She keeps her notes in one binder with different sections. And then, number 3, what does she do before she goes home? Before she goes home, she checks her bag carefully. And then number 4, what does she plan after dinner? She plans how much time she will need for each assignment. or also you can include the adverb clause. She plans how much time she will need for each assignment after dinner. And then number 5, what does she do when she feels tired? She takes a short break. Or she takes a short break when she feels tired. Okay, so let's move on to exercise 3 on page 75. Write the sentences in the correct order to make a paragraph. Okay, so the title of this paragraph is An Impatient Boss. An Impatient Boss. Okay, so we can already see the topic sentence. So it says, my boss Frida is a very impatient person. So I'm going to give you some time to go ahead and write the next sentence and complete the story. Okay, so this is pretty easy because there are a lot of signal words that help you to figure out what comes next. Okay, so the second sentence is, for example, she often gets angry when you are 3 minutes late. And then, she is also not a good listener and she often interrupts. Finally, she is always in a hurry and never has enough time. In conclusion, Frida is a very impatient person and it is difficult to work for her. Okay, so let's move on to exercise 4. This time we're going to write a short paragraph about Paula. Include a topic sentence, examples to support your topic sentence, and a signal before your conclusion. So you can see a web diagram, and in the middle is Paula, so this diagram is going to talk about Paula. Okay, so if you look at the topic sentence, it says, Paula is an amazing friend. Okay, so you have to form your own sentences, but make sure to include the 4 details, and you might have to add some extra words, and also make sure you include a conclusion. Okay? Okay, so you might say, Paula is an amazing friend. For example, she is a good listener. She doesn't interrupt when you are talking. She is also a patient person and she doesn't get angry when you are late. In summary, Paula is a wonderful person and I am glad to have her as a friend. Okay, so keep in mind that when you write a conclusion, you are restating the topic or the main idea. So the topic sentence and the concluding sentence should be very similar but not exact copies. For example, if you look at the paragraph about Nita, you can see that the topic sentence is, Nita is a very organized person. And the concluding sentence is, in summary, Nita is an organized person and a successful student. And then also in our student's book about Lucinda, we can see that the topic sentence is, Lucinda is not a very good time manager. And then the concluding sentence is, in summary, Lucinda is a weak time manager because she procrastinates. Okay, so we're going to move on to lesson F. So I want you to open your student's book to page 80. Page 80.